For the first time ever, the per capita GDP in Mississippi, the poorest state in the US, has surpassed $47,000, while in the UK, it's just $45,000. If the UK, France, or Germany were to join the United States, they would be the poorest states in the Union. This news blew up online, with some people gloating and others outraged. But is that really the whole story? And why has GDP, a tool created for wartime mobilization, become the ultimate measure of our well-being? What is GDP and why is it so popular? Before the 1930s, there was no GDP, nor even the term macroeconomics. Everything changed thanks to American economist Simon Kuznets. In 1934, during the Great Depression, he developed this metric at the request of the US Congress. The idea proved so convenient that it stuck around for decades. Ironically, Kuznets himself warned that a nation's welfare can scarcely be inferred from its national income. But nobody listened. The easiest way to calculate GDP is by expenditure. Everything spent by people, the government, and businesses, plus the difference between exports and imports. To understand what this means for the average person, this number is divided by the population, giving us GDP per capita. It became a universal tool for comparing countries with different currencies and economic structures. The logic is simple. A larger output is usually linked to higher incomes, which allows people to spend more and lets the government collect more taxes for social programs. Why GDP is misleading. Examples of distortions. In reality, however, this logic often fails. The news about Mississippi is a perfect example. So why doesn't GDP reflect the real situation? 1. It counts all spending, even the pointless kind. If we dig a hole and then fill it back in, GDP grows twice, even though nothing has actually changed. In China, officials spent years boosting GDP by building empty cities and bridges to nowhere. Did that make the Chinese people richer? No. 2. It inflates prosperity due to large corporations. Take Ireland. It regularly ranks in the top 10 countries for GDP per capita. But this is a statistical illusion created by some 1,500 multinational companies like Apple that are registered there for tax reasons. Their massive profits are counted in Ireland's GDP, but the average Irish person doesn't see a dime of it. Let's get back to Mississippi. This GDP per capita is nearly $54,000, but the average personal income there is only $30,000. In Germany, these figures are almost equal. GDP per capita is around $54,000, and the average income is about $55,000. So, in Germany, GDP actually reflects how well-off people are, while in Mississippi, it doesn't. 3. It ignores debt and inequality. GDP measures the flow of income but says nothing about wealth or debt. Two people can have the same salary, but one has $1 million in the bank, and the other is drowning in debt. It's the same with countries. The US government debt per capita is $106,000, while Germany's is $36,000. Furthermore, GDP doesn't account for how wealth is distributed in a society. What GDP hides: inequality and quality of life. To measure inequality, we use the Gini index, ranging from 0 to 1. If you plot it on a chart alongside GDP per capita, the picture becomes clear. Wealthy countries with low inequality, like Norway, are in the bottom right corner. The US is an outlier. Despite its high GDP, it has one of the highest levels of inequality among developed nations. Since 1963, the wealth gap between the richest families and the middle class has grown from 36 times to 71 times. GDP growth makes the rich even richer, while the poor get the crumbs. But the biggest flaw of GDP is that it ignores quality of life. Health, education, the environment, and leisure time. GDP per capita in the US is 28% higher than in the Netherlands, but Americans work 27% more hours. So who has the better life? Are there more accurate metrics? There have been attempts to create alternatives. The UN's Human Development Index, HDI, considers life expectancy, education, and income. But it's also an average and doesn't capture people's subjective sense of happiness. The World Happiness Report includes surveys of residents, GDP, social support, and corruption. Finland has been the leader for years. Numbio's quality of life index assesses purchasing power, safety, pollution, and cost of living. But it's subjective too. In 2022, The Hague came out on top, which caused a wave of irony among its own residents. Compare the leaders across all these indexes, and you won't find a single country that tops every list. Only Switzerland consistently ranks in the top 3. The bottom line: the next time you hear about GDP growth, remember, it's just an economic snapshot that doesn't show debt, inequality, or quality of life. A high GDP isn't synonymous with a happy country. Perhaps the perfect metric, a single number that can describe a nation's well-being, simply doesn't exist. What do you think? Can a country's quality of life be measured by a single number? Which index seems the most accurate to you?